Easier for you. You're fine.
They're in the directory.
Good afternoon. We'd like to thank each of you for coming today and participating in today's Healthy Initiative. And we'd like to start off with just letting you know that, again, you know most of all of us in the room today, but we're going to go through and have introductions. Today we are here to present the Good Deeds Program. And the Good Deeds Program isn't anything new. It's actually been around in Ohio, throughout the different counties for a number of years and throughout other states. However, I'd like to give special recognition and a big thank you to Judge Bender for having recognized that we do have a need here in Fayette County for a Good Deeds Program. And he reached out to several of us this past spring, early summer, and he assembled several of us to help bring our resources and the information we have in our particular offices together, and reached out to several of the attorneys in the area to see if we could bring this information to you. Because everybody here has one thing in common, and that is we're all human beings. And as human beings, we know that at some point in time, the inevitable will happen. Each of us will pass. And each of us likes to think that we're in charge. We know we're just a part of small part of a big plan, but we like to be able to have influence over what happens when we do pass. What happens to our possessions? What happens to our automobiles, our recreational vehicles, watercraft, RVs, campers? What happens to our real estate? What happens to the land and property that we own? We would like to be able to choose how that is transferred, to whom it's transferred. We would like to do that with respect and as quickly, efficiently, and accurately as possible. So that is all the type of information and resources that's going into this Good Deeds Program. Trying to make sure that everyone has that information available so that you can assess your own needs, formulate your own questions, and then get with the proper authorities, such as attorneys, to be able to get legal advice on those things, and then get them taken care of for your loved ones. So when that time does come, they're able to actually have the best gift of all. They're not making decisions in a time of grief. They're actually being able to carry out your wishes and be able to grieve. So today, again, we are presenting the Good Deeds Program, and I'd like to start off with introduction. So our first presenter will be Judge David P. Bender, and he is an elected official, and he's also serving as your current Fayette County Probate Court Judge. And then also Sandy Wilson, she is serving as our County Clerk of Courts. She's also an elected official. And third, I'll be presenting. I'm Kim Coyle Butler, and I'm honored to have been elected as your Fayette County Recorder. And although the three of us are going to present you information, the three of us are rather restricted by the Ohio Revised Code as to what we can actually advise you on. We're not able to give you legal advice. We're not able to help you create documents and edit or change documents. But we, as I said before, Judge Bender reached out to some of our attorneys, and we're very pleased to have with us today Jesse Weed. And he's here. He also wears multiple hats within the county as an elected official, and he serves as your Fayette County prosecuting attorney. But today he's here as a private practice attorney, and he is offering legal advice. So at the end, we'll have question and answer session with him. So that way you can formulate your questions and have a little bit of guidance and advice there. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to Judge Bender.
It's kind of Kim to credit me for this, but again, full disclosure, Sandy Wilson's been bugging me for a while about doing this. What he's thinking is of. And this is a concept we borrowed from other counties. I'm not strictly going to go by those brochures that you have, but they're good information for you to have, to review, and be aware of. crowd we have here today is a little different than the last crowd we had, a little younger. So we're going to change this up just a little bit to address certain things. I'm here to talk a little bit about estate planning. And many of you think you're too young for estate planning, but there's a lot of things that go into that. The goal of any good estate plan is to, upon my death, transfer my assets to the people that I want to get my assets, and to do that as efficiently and inexpensively as possible. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can do that, and I'll let Sandy Wilson talk to you about automobiles and auto titles. I'll let Kim talk to you about real estate, different ways you can do that. But I'm going to focus on other things like bank accounts, retirement accounts, life insurance, your personal property. Now, the first thing that on that list is bank accounts. And Rick used to work in a bank. He can tell you all this, I'm sure, by heart. But when you open a bank account, a lot of people don't give a lot of thought to how they hold that bank account. I'm a married man. I have a joint account with my wife, and it is joint and survivorship. Unless you tell them specifically at the bank to set it up a certain way, they're not necessarily going to do it that way. So, upon my death, my wife Susan owns the entire bank account. Now, if I just set up a joint bank account with her, upon my death, she might own half the account, and I own the other half that goes to my estate and now gets drugged through court. So if you're a married couple and happily married, so that you think it's going to stay that way, I would strongly urge you to consider the survivorship account with your spouse. You can also do a payable on death account. Let's say I'm a single person, but I have children. Now, I can set them up as joint owners of my account and make it joint survivorship, but now I've just added all of my kids' creditors to my bank account. So if they have problems and get in financial difficulties, their creditors can come after my money. I don't think I really want that. And I see a lot of elderly people do that with their kids, and it backfires on them. So what I can do is go to the bank and say, could you make this account payable on death to my children? That way, as long as I'm alive, they can't touch it. Their creditors can't touch it. But upon my death, it's theirs, which is what I would want for my situation. And everybody's situation is different. I'm going to refer to me repeatedly only because I know my specific circumstances. I don't know yours. You do the same thing with your retirement account. You're all in PERS or some division thereof. They ask you to list a beneficiary. Don't take that lightly. Think about how you're going to do it. And when I name a beneficiary on a retirement account or a life insurance account, I name multiple levels. My wife is my beneficiary of PERS. But if she dies before me, there's a second level of beneficiaries, my children. We should all think about that because Lord only knows which spouse is going to go first. And we might think, gee, I'm terribly ill, I'm going to pass before my wife, and then I outlive my wife by 10 years. So you got to think about those things. Life insurance is the same way. I set it up with a beneficiary, think of a second beneficiary. Personal property is a different animal. It's going to go through your estate. Now, we don't think about that too often, but you know, the TV, my house, the sofa, the armoire, if you have a fancy dining room, those kind of things. So we should probably have a will. I strongly recommend you have a will, because if you don't make out a will, the state of Ohio has already made one out for you. If you look in here where it talks about statute of descent distribution, and I know it's hard to read here, but it's in the brochure that's on the table in front of you, it will tell you in a convoluted way how your property will pass. Now, the easy way to make that simpler is to see somebody like Jess over here and have him draw you up a will. And it will go exactly where you want it to go, with a few exceptions. I cannot write my spouse out of my will. If I'm married, she's entitled to at least claim some of it. I can't say, no, she's not getting anything, it's going to my firstborn child or something like that. But, so make out a will, and that way what you want is known to everybody, and you can designate a lot of things, including in your will, who's going to be in charge of heading things up. I can't tell you how many times I see siblings that argue with each other because mom died or dad died, and now I'm in charge and I'm not going to tell you anything. You got one sibling that likes to do that, it seems like. I got a call from somebody last night at home that's a family member of mine that's in that situation right now. So, other things that you need to think about. A lot of people will advertise that you should have a trust. I would just tell you in regards to trust, if you're a very wealthy individual, you should think about a trust. If you are not a very wealthy individual, save your money, don't pay the attorney all that money to draw up a trust for you that you do not need. If you do draw up a trust, actually put your assets into the trust. I can have a trust, never transfer my real estate or my car or my bank account into the trust, and the trust did nothing but give some attorney a bunch of money for drawing up a trust for me. But if you have a special situation, maybe you have a special needs child, a trust might be a good thing to think about. And it might be addressed in my will that if I die, my disabled child will have a special needs trust. And somebody like Jess could explain that to you. A lot of people are worried about nursing home expenses, so they think I'll start a trust. I would suggest to you, by the time most people think of that, they're too close to going into the nursing home. You know, there are rules that there's a 5-year look-back period for Medicare and Medicaid, that if you transferred assets out of your name within 5 years before you went into the nursing home, they go back after and get those assets anyhow. So, maybe a good reason to think about it when you're younger, but my mother brought that up to me the other day. She's 88. I told her, Mom, it's probably too late, and they already have a trust. So, I don't wish ill will upon my mother, but she's getting a little up there in years to be thinking about that. Other things that we need to think of. Oftentimes overlooked in the estate planning process is the term I refer to in general as a power of attorney. If you set up a will, and as we get older, it's wise to have powers of attorney. And there are different kinds of powers of attorney. There's a financial power of attorney that if I can't make the bank do the closing on the real estate, I can send my wife with power of attorney that says she can sign for me. And if my health declines and I need somebody to do my banking, as long as there's somebody that I can trust to handle my finances, that's a good thing to have in place. There is a healthcare power of attorney. My health is declining and the doctor says I'm no longer able to make my own medical decisions. The healthcare power of attorney designates who can make those for me. Once again, it better be somebody that you trust pretty well, a spouse, a child, a responsible child, something along those lines. There's something we refer to as a living will. That's a document that you sign, and these are things you all can download off the internet, because the state of Ohio has already drafted one for you. It's not like you got to spend a lot of money on an attorney for these items. But the living will talks about what steps I want you to take if I'm on death's door. Do I want to be on a ventilator? Do I want you to take extraordinary steps to keep me alive at all costs? Or do I just want you to ease my pain and suffering? If the doctor says I'm going to go, let me go. And that pretty much sums up what I want to cover with you today. I want to turn it over to Sandy. And like I say, if you have questions, we're not really, because of our positions, allowed to give you legal advice. But I'm looking at an attorney in the corner who might be able to do that for you. Or you might have your own family attorney. I'm not trying to refer to any one specific person. But when we're all done here, if there's questions, I'll answer general questions. I'm not going to get into too many specifics.
what Judge Bender was talking about with the states. As clerk of court, I'm over the title department. We're still part of the clerk's office, but the title department, as everyone knows, deals with vehicles. One thing that you can do, and this sort of tags on to what Judge Bender was talking about, if I can get my little thing back, is surviving spouse. As Judge Bender was talking about, surviving spouse, they automatically get certain things. Some of the things that they do get is vehicles. So, spouse passes away, the other spouse is left. They can take up to $65,000 in vehicles just automatically as the surviving spouse, as long as those vehicles aren't specifically in a will. You know, you have your, I don't know, your little Chevy Chevelle that you got in college or something, and you want your son to have it, you put that in the will. That might be a little something that your surviving spouse may not be able to take advantage of, obviously, it's in the will. But they can take up to $65,000 in vehicles just by filling out the affidavit, provide the death certificate, and go along that route. Obviously, on any of the things that are talked about in vehicles, if there's a lien on the vehicle, those still carry with it. Just because there's a lien on it and the spouse passes away, it doesn't go away. The lien is still on that vehicle, so that'll be something that you would have to address with the lien holder to help you transfer that over. With right of survivorship, you can think ahead and think, you know, I want to make sure that when I pass away, my aunt, it was a good example with my aunt. She had a pickup truck that was my grandpa's, and she decided that when she passed away, she wanted to make sure that I got it. So she did a right of survivorship, listing both of us, well, her, and then it goes to me once she passed away. It automatically goes that way. Her half interest is basically going to transfer over to me in that vehicle. Once again, if there's any liens, you got to talk to the lien holder about that. You can do that with anybody, maybe your neighbor. You're really good friends with your neighbor. You want to make sure that they get your vehicle. I mean, you'd have to be really good friends with your neighbor. That they want if they want your vehicle, you want to give it to them, you can do that with a neighbor. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone that you're related to. Transfer on debt. This is something that it can be, and this is where Hope helped me out a little bit too. We'll talk a little bit. Hope is actually my pro on this. I sort of get little, pointers from her. But you can list as many beneficiaries as you want on a transfer of debt. So, but keep in mind, it goes from, if you're listing 2 other people, then basically it goes to those other 2 people. So it's not just down the line, whoever's next on the list, it goes to the other 2 people as far as that goes. And it could be a benefit, it could be a company, a trust, and while you're living, they get nothing. So and basically it's just a follow-up with what Judge Bender was talking about on accounts. It's just, we're talking vehicles here. And then, this is the form that you can go in, and once again, like Judge Bender mentioned, talk to the attorney. We're not attorneys, we can't tell you, we can't suggest anything to you, but you come in, you say, I would like a title and I would like all these beneficiaries listed on this title. We can print out this form, you can fill everything out, or you can even get it ahead of time online at the BMV website. And you can just have this filled out and say, I want all of these people on this title as my transfer of debt beneficiaries. And then that title be created. I think, Hope, you mentioned that on that title it would list one person, but it would have a note saying that there are several other beneficiaries listed.
If you would list, if you have 5 kids, you want all 5 as beneficiaries. We just warn you, if some of them live out of state, they're all going to have to be here if you pass to have that transfer. But you can have as many beneficiaries as you want listed, and on the title, it'll list the very first beneficiary you have, But then next to it may say 3 additional beneficiaries exist. It won't have their names, but we'll have it in the system. And then everybody would have to be present if you would pass.
So basically, you have like a little mini reunion at the title department of all the people that you want on there. Is that correct, Hope?
Yes.
And basically, that's it. Title's pretty easy. I mean, it may not be in certain situations, but it's not quite like real estate, I don't believe. I think real estate might be a little bit more intense on that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kim.
Thank you, Sandy. Well, as you know, I'm Kim Coyle Butler, and I'm the recorder here in Fayette County. But I'm also pleased to have with me today my Chief Deputy, Sonia Kingery. Sonia? And back at the office, we have my Deputy Clerk, Lisa Robinette. And the 3 of us are very pleased to work for you, the Fayette County citizens, and throughout the state, and anyone, as far as that goes, that needs our services, we actually work for you. So typically our office is open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we're located over on 133 South Main Street, the Fayette County Administrative Building. And that may seem like, why is she telling us this? We work with these people. But believe it or not, we actually have several times a month, we'll have mail that comes addressed to the courthouse. We have phone calls occasionally where several times a year we'll have someone lost within the courthouse. I've been on every floor. Where are you people? They're calling me from the cell phone. We're down the street. So when you see this information in your handouts, that's why we provided a business card, so that you have access if you need our services. Any of your friends or family need anything from us that we can help you with, feel free to share this information. It provides you our phone number, our address, our email, and our website. So we're happy to work with you folks. And a lot of times people just need a little bit of guidance, and we can work them through the system over the phone, how to navigate through our website. So that's handy for you or family or friends. Now the next thing in your brochure, in your handout, is a brochure, and it's about the Ohio County Recorders. And in the first part of the trifold, you see a little bit of a history lesson. And it's just really interesting. When you have spare time, you can look through there. The position of the recorder's office actually goes back to the 1700s. And in 1787, when the Northwest Territory was formed, they found that there was a need to record who owned property. So as you go through there, you can read, and it leads you to today. And what do we do at the recorder's office? Well, as we were talking, many of you own real estate. You own your own home or some type of property. So in the center section of this handout, it tells you several of the documents that we record and keep handy at the office. So if you have a need for your deed and you can't find it, or any of these documents, you can either go online, download them yourself, print them at home, which is free of charge, or you can give us a call, again, an email, or just come in and we'll be happy to walk through the process with each of you. So as you can see here, deeds, mortgages, loans, certificate of transfers, sometimes they're land contracts, sometimes we have different agreements, it may be a plat. Those are the type of things that we record in our office, because our job is to record documents so that they are able to be accurately and clearly recorded, be able to be preserved, but also be able to not only be maintained, preserved, but retrieved when needed, and then able to produce a clear copy. So one of the other items down here is military service discharge papers. So if any of you are veterans or have family or friends that have been a veteran, ask them, did you go to your local recorder's office and get that document recorded? I would encourage you to encourage them to have that done, because sometimes the documents come up missing, sometimes there are things like fires, but if they've had that document recorded, they can come to us at any time, provide proper proof of identification, such as a photo ID, and then we can get them that certified copy they need. We work really well with Veterans Affairs Department. Will and his group has a lot of the documents and works with them. We're able to record the DD-214s, people will get copies, go up to their office, and they're able to obtain benefits that otherwise they may not have had access to. So Veterans Affairs and Recorder's Office work well together in that regard. And it's a service that we provide free of charge as well. So then, as things relate to today's discussion, in your handout, there's a two-sided copy, and it starts off with resources. And it's basically listing the most common types of deeds. There are 5 types: general warranty deed, limited warranty deed, joint and survivorship deed, fiduciary deed, and a quitclaim deed. So we also talk about a transfer on death designation affidavit. So what does that mean? Basically, deeds, again, are proving that you own your property or your land. We're here talking about planning for the future and how you want that property to be transferred upon your death. And again, we had the goals, trying to make it quick, efficient, and relatively inexpensive. So commonly, people want to avoid probate, and the 2 most common ways to do that, if you look down through here in several of the slides that I have, give you definitions of each of these deeds. Just know that basically survivorship deeds is one way, but if you have a different type of deed and that survivorship language is within it, you're still accomplishing the same goal. So you don't have to have a joint survivorship deed. You can have any one of these combined with that language and you'll accomplish the same thing. So there again, I would encourage each of you, when you get a chance, go home, look at your deeds, see if you can find them, and then if you can, look and see, do I have a survivorship deed? Or do I have survivorship language within my deed? If you do have that, then you may be fine. If you don't have that, you can, again, seek legal counsel and get one created, or you may talk to your attorney about doing a transfer on death designation affidavit. And what that simply means is you are putting in writing that you're the property owner, the legal description is there, citing the address, and then you're designating upon your death who would actually receive your property. You can have one person, you can have multiple people, you can indicate the percentages that they receive, and that property, you are still in charge. You're alive, it is still your property until the time that you pass. And then that's when one of the recipients would take a death certificate to an attorney, have the conversation, and then they can create the proper affidavit to confirm death and get that property transferred as you see fit. So a TOD, designation affidavit is one way, or you can have a deed with survivorship language. Again, if you come to our office, we can provide you a copy of your deed. We can give you a brief description of each of these, but we can't exactly tell you what's best for you, which option. That's a conversation you want to have with your legal representation. So the next thing that we talk about last year in 2021, I started my term as recorder, and when we had our very first tax season, I was pleased. Rick Mead came down and shared with me that they had a customer come in to the auditor's office, and they actually had property here in Fayette County, but they also had property in Pickaway County. And my counterpart there had reached out and became proactive, and she had implemented fraud protection in Pickaway County. So Rick shared that with me, and I got to investigating with her, several of the other recorders, and then our own record management system. And last year, by May, we had implemented here in Fayette County a fraud protection program. Now, the one thing I want to caution you is, I think all of us have heard all of the commercials, whether it be TV or radio, saying, buy LifeLock or buy this solution. You know, become a member, and we'll help you protect your property. There may be certain elements that they can, but the truth is, whether it's a free service or a paid service, you can't actually stop the theft. However, it's very similar to our health situation. If you go to the doctor and get regular checkups and you keep an eye on your health, if something happens, the earlier off, you're gonna be able to solve that problem. Same way with your property. If somebody does do something fraudulently, the quicker you're made aware of that and you detect it, the quicker and easier and relatively more inexpensive it'll be to get that corrected. So CoFile actually has on our website where you can log in, you can set up your own profile if you want, and be alerted by email if anything happens to your property. So if somebody comes on and tries to get a mortgage and it's your property, etc., those type of things you'll be alerted by email. So if anybody has interest in this, it's a free service, again, it's provided, but none of these solutions, paid or unpaid, will prevent fraud, but it does help you detect it early on and get the help you need. So basically with that, I again want to just reiterate what the others had said. We'll help you with anything we can with resources. We'll be glad to look things up for you, give you copies of things that you need. But the actual advice, that is where you want to consult with an attorney and have that conversation to get the best options for you, and then they'll work with you to allow you to make the decision what is best. With that, I'd like to turn it over. Does anyone have any questions for Jess? Jess, would you like to add anything?
I'm probably loud enough that everybody can hear me over here. The only thing is, all of this is really good information. The only thing I can stress from a practitioner's perspective is that as I look around the room, I'm not going to count, but everybody has a different situation, and everybody has different goals, everybody has different desires, and there are people here that are at different stages of life. And so that the only thing that didn't get talked about today is when you have small children or you have children under the age of 18, sometimes in a will you want to make sure you have a say in who cares for them, if both you and your spouse or both mother and father are deceased. That's something that's important. And or if they're to receive financial compensation, or they're going to be inheriting your assets. At what age do you want your children to be in charge of the finances that they would come into should you and your spouse or both mom and dad pass away? A lot of people aren't comfortable with that happening at 18 years of age. And so there's some things that you can create in a will, you can create trusts in a will to push that down, push that out a little bit. But no, basically other than that, everybody has a unique situation. So whether it's me or it's another attorney in town or another attorney elsewhere, by all means, probably a good conversation to figure out what your goals are. And generally, unless you have something really, really far out there, we're able to accomplish and accommodate what you want. I mean, I once had a guy who had 5 kids and he had 1 acre and he wanted to leave 1/5 of each acre to each of his 5 kids. He had them numbered and they did not have road access, Morgan, so he didn't hire me because I couldn't do what he wanted, but his estate plan wanted to violate the zoning laws. So it just wasn't, other than, like I said, unless you're really way out there off the reservation, we're probably going to be able to accommodate what you want. And as Judge Bender said, there's a lot of publications out there, and frankly, there's a lot of attorneys. I'm not going to say that none of them are local. I don't think anybody local does this. But there are attorneys that are what are known as trust bills, where you go in and they get you to spend a whole bunch of money and create a trust that you don't need. And because with a lot of these other vehicles that people have talked about today, we can do the exact same thing for a whole lot less money. So that's, the other thing that I always tell people in my office is that if you want to do right by yourself, your children, seek out an attorney, spend a little bit of money while you're alive, getting your affairs in order if you want to do right by the attorneys, which no one ever wants to do right by an attorney. But if you want to do right by the attorneys, plan nothing and let your kids come to us after you're deceased, because we're going to have a whole lot more time invested in sorting out what mess you left, and we're going to make a lot more money, but your kids may not get nearly as much as what you think because of a lack of planning, and that happens. So in doing this, though, I will say, generationally, I worked for Bob Hammond almost 20 years ago when I was heading to law school. So people that were in their upper 80s or 90s then were, a generation above, some of the oldest people that we have in Fayette County now. They didn't tell anybody anything. And then even that older generation that we have now, they still didn't tell their kids a lot, but they've done a little bit more. As I look, if it's parents and people in their 60s, 70s, even lower 80s now tend to have been through that with their parents, so their kids are a little bit more involved. And frankly, the laws are a little friendlier than they used to be. I'll pat the legislature on the back. They've created a lot of these transfer on death designation affidavits, the TODs on car titles, the transfer up to $65,000 in motor vehicles to a surviving spouse. They've created a lot of not loopholes isn't the right word, but a lot of opportunities for items to pass to the intended beneficiaries without having people spend a lot of money. So some of that didn't used to exist, but it does now. But the best thing to do is sit down with an attorney, and sometimes an attorney in conjunction with a financial planner to figure out what's the best course for you. Because while ultimately, Penny, Brenda, Chastity, and look down, at the end of the day, I may create the exact same things for all of them, but I probably wouldn't. But I may if I sat down with all of them, but getting there might be a little bit different, or the words within those documents might be a little bit different because of just how your lives are and how you want things to go to your kids. And there's specifics, there's generals, and ultimately, the best thing to do is do a little bit of planning for either you, your parents, your friends. Make sure that everybody's in line. And I will say that the biggest mistake that people get in the mind of estate planning is that we always think that we are going to outlive our parents and that our children are going to outlive us. Because I have lots of people that come in that say, all right, I've got my parents here, and we get their stuff all settled out, I'm going to take care of my stuff. And on a few occasions, they've been dead before their parents. So make sure your parents are taken care of, because as the judge said, if they're in their 80s, then time's probably not on their side. But take care of your stuff too, because there's no guarantees. So, any specific questions? All right.
Any questions you have for any of the three of us?
I have a question on the banks.
Yes.
It's not like the rest of it, I want to be dead, but on the bank account stuff, when you said like joint survivorship and then payable on death by children, so what if both parents pass at the same time? Can you make that account both?
The bank will let you, I think you can, yes.
Okay.
Legally speaking, you can.
Okay.
Huntington may tell you different.
You just have to ask the right questions.
Okay.
When you go to open an account at the bank, you need to be really insistent on what you want, because a lot of those people don't have a lot of training in that, and they're just gonna open you up. I say David and Susan, it's gonna be a joint account with David and Susan. It's not gonna be survivorship or transfer on death or anything like that.
Okay.
So I'm assuming you can go into your bank and change that at any time, right?
It's a simple form. I've had people do it all the time.
I mean, it's not a new account or anything, it's just adding to your existing information.
Now, if there's two of you on it or three on it, you all have to be there to
Okay.
sign.
And I'm gonna tell you one more time, I can't begin to tell you the trouble we have. The people that come in there and put their kids on their account jointly with them, and then we find out the kids have cleaned out the account, or the creditors have come in and attached the account. bad things happen. Now, in a perfect world, know my kids are financially secure and nothing bad's gonna happen to them, and maybe that's a good idea, but usually I recommend something different than that. Too many times I've seen people, whether they intended to or not, bad consequences happen under that.
You can make a kid a signatory on the account, but then I don't like that because then you still have the kid cleaning out the account, or the person at the bank doesn't understand what you mean by signatory, they get at it as an owner. Just see an attorney, do a general financial power of attorney, and that accomplishes the same thing. And we're not that expensive.
In all honesty, when I was in private practice, and I'm sure the same with Jess, drawing up a will for somebody which you charge is really not that much. It wasn't really something we're making a lot of money on. It was a service we provided to people, and it's a good investment of $100 or $200 to get it taken care of.
Yeah, and you see in here the LegalZoom ads. Please don't do that, because I'm very thankful of someone that did do that, and I was able to set the will aside because it didn't do what probably they actually thought they did or they wanted to do. But there's a lot of formalities with signing a will that if you print it off the internet, you're probably not going to follow, and a skilled attorney could probably set it aside down the road. Or it's not, there's lots of very specific language within wills, and there's lots of very specific language within powers of attorney that are dependent upon you. And when I hear the costs of LegalZoom and what I know I charge, what I know other people charge for the same stuff, it's pretty stinking comparable. And if we screw it up, I've got malpractice insurance. If you screw it up with LegalZoom, you're out. That's fine.
And not just with that, a local store used to sell packets, you can get a divorce or dissolution, just went out and filled it out. My private practice had a lot of people come to me after the fact and did that, and oops, I didn't mention my PERS, or this isn't, I can't help you. You did this, you didn't want to pay an attorney money to do it, and now you're stuck with the consequences. In all honesty, spending a little bit of time to get Jess's opinion on something is probably going to pay off dividends big time in the long run, or not just Jess, but any local attorney. Anything else we can answer for anybody?